our normal lives. So there is love, and the same with Nietzsche, because Nietzsche craved love of a woman, of course, but ultimately what we have left is fingir e amar with Nietzsche as well. To pretend is to love, which he constantly does, and kind of lives out the ultimatum about the campus by becoming more complex rather than more complete. So that's my defense of the modernist world. One question?
Yeah, still time.
That's really still have energy for.
Oh, I have, yes. Okay. I mean, I hope people who need to go somewhere will leave.
Ready to go now, yeah.
I was thinking, you opened with the question of dream. You mentioned, you quoted two passages, both from Nietzsche and from Pessoa about the dream. I thought you would return to the issue of dreams.
I missed it. It's down here, but
and somehow it is some sort of question if you want to develop. Because I'm interested in this. It's really important also for both of them and for Pessoa. And it might also be related to the, at least I was thinking about what you said about the comparison you did with Nietzsche, but disdain is something that is thinking without conscience. And the way Pessoa writes about dreaming in the book of Disquiet as a state of, I'm not sure about this, I would have to read it again, but I think there are a few passages where it refers to dream as related to the feeling of being tired, of tiredness. And this idea of being, tiredness is an English word?
Yes, tedium, I think. Yes.
Tedium, but also tired in the sense of feeling tired physically and intellectually. And this allows somehow in between feeling that allows dream to come, an awakened dream that allows figures. Yeah. But if you pass it to the figures that come from the dream as if out of the mist. And I don't know if you agree with this idea.
Yes. Thank you so much, because in fact, the most important thing I had to say, I think, was I overlooked at the end, because I was embarrassed I'd gone on for too long. But it's this, and this is another non-rhetorical, genuine question, that for Nietzsche, this, what I have in this diagram is these drives are imagining, driving all the time. Now he says in sleep, they manifest as dreams. So we have, I'm thinking this starts in Altocumen and goes through a lot of it in Morgenröte, the dawn or daybreak, where he's saying our passage in Daybreak, I think, erleben und erdichten, experiencing and making up, or being a poet, because erdichten is to poetize, to make up. So for Nietzsche, as I read him, you've got these drives because as long as we're alive, the drives are operating, but at night, there's no input from the external world, or very little input, and so the car backfiring on the street down there might get incorporated into my dream as a pistol shot or something like that. But there, he says, the dream is the clearest picture of what's going on with the drives, because the ego, the I, is out, is gone, is not controlling and directing. And so then he says, okay, we wake up. Well, we wake up, still embodied, and the body is still working. So none of that stuff stops. But what happens is then, there's a bit more going on. There's a bit more the drives have to deal with, which is what we call the world, which for Nietzsche, of course, is nothing but drives, if you take the world as well, the power seriously. Other people or drives, tables and chairs, everything, it's all drives. But the free play of interpreting, because all the drives are interpreting, when I'm in bed, I've got pressure from the bedclothes and maybe the tick of a alarm clock or something, but very little else. So the drives can just drive away and imagine worlds and landscapes and people and so on and so forth. In the real world, there's a sudden constriction of their free play. I mean, this is all Nietzsche, it's not me. And so, but there's no need to suppose, or be kind of unreasonable to suppose, that the world of the dream goes away. No, it's there, it's just kind of clamped down upon by all this other driving that's going on, which is what we call the real world and the external world. So when Pessoa talks about tedium or tiredness, and Jung and Freud talk this way too, but of course when the French guy, l'abaissement du niveau mental, when consciousness kind of dies down a bit, it's been a hard day and I'm exhausted, and then I imagine people denigrate it as fantasizing. But what Nietzsche would say is, well, no, that's just, you're not paying much attention to input from the real world. You're much more in contact with what's coming, what's driving from within the body. So my question is, I got the impression, so one last thing. So my experience of you, and especially of people that I get to know, and especially of really intense relationships, is going to be conditioned by all the drive people that's happening anyway in my dreams, and that this body has been dreaming for millennia. And so no wonder when we fall in love and it's all delusional and heaven and lights and music and so on and so forth. Well, no, because that's some divine figure is being projected onto this poor human being from this continual dreaming that's going on. And yeah, it takes days, weeks, months, years, sometimes, well, usually it wears off, and then suddenly you realize, oh, this is a real human being here, not a divine figure at all. So my question is, for Nietzsche then, the dream persons are going to get merged with the so-called real persons. So this is another problem that you raised with the other and love and so on, because there's always, we can't see around this driving is the basic thing, and the other drives are sort of, the people drives coming from outside are often relatively weak, and so it's really hard to figure out who people are, who we are, who other people are. There were a number of passages in this book, in the book of Disquiet, where Pessoa seems to talk about parallel paths, that you've got dreaming here and all these friends that he has dreaming, and then you've got people he meets, and those are usually just, the vegetable seller or the newspaper agent or the guys in the office and so on. But he seems to talk about them as sort of parallel. You've got dream experience and then you've got waking experience, and they run together. And when he's alone in his room at night or not sleeping in bed, he doesn't sleep much, he's doing that dreaming thing. Whereas in Nietzsche it would be, no, there's the basic drives from the body as long as it's alive, and persons as a sort of merging, as a result, a function of more, just being open to more drives, the drives of the whole world. Do you see what I'm driving at? And is that, Pessoa isn't called upon to, give us an ontology of how this works, but it just seemed to me that might be an interesting difference in the way they're conceiving it. And I've answered your question with a question, but is that partially answer what you're...
The question of the dream is, I think it's fundamental for this issue of multiplicity, where the characters come from. And dream as if, I tend to read it as if Pessoa was describing the creative process in art also, by describing the way he allowed himself to enter into states, is describing his own process of creating multiplicity. Nietzsche, I don't know, compare it well.
But it would seem to me that Nietzsche would agree entirely there, except that he wouldn't, I'm sorry, I can't put my finger on those passages, but that he wouldn't talk about a parallelism, but he'd talk about basic drive psychic operations, most of which we're unconscious of during the day because everything is coming in on us, but at night, and in these half-dreaming states, the hypnagogic states that the depth psychologists talk about, then you've got this quietening down of the influence, this diminishing of the influence from other people and things, and much more closer to the dream state. But for Nietzsche, he's quite adamant that this basic, as long as the body is alive, we're going to have the basic archetypal, I call them archaic drive, being operating all the time. And I mean, that to me, boy, if we could get, I mean, Freud and Jung call it projection and transference and all that stuff. And that's the source of so many of our problems, right? Especially since if it's dark, I certainly don't want to be it. It better be you that's the other, and easier if you're identifiable as another by the color of your skin. And then what all sorts of mischief gets perpetrated there because people are completely unself-aware, completely lacking in self-knowledge. But thank you. I mean, I wasn't going to get anywhere with that, but it was the most important question I had for you.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.